Most people who go through the experience of their partner pulling away in the twin flame journey believe they're being rejected, abandoned, or punished by fate, when in reality, they're being prepared to receive what they've always asked for in the most intense way possible. Carl Jung discovered through his studies on the archetypes that govern deep soul connections that there's a specific moment in the spiritual journey where the divine masculine, and when I say masculine, I'm not necessarily talking about the physical man, but rather an active energy that triggers evolution. This energy applies a test so subtle, so devastating, and so necessary that only a minority is strong enough to pass this test and experience the conscious union that all others spend entire lifetimes seeking. Today you're going to discover that when your twin flame pulls away, when they create distance, when they seem to test your emotional limits in the most painful way possible, it's not always rejection. At the right time, it's approval. And if you're watching this video right now, if your soul has been guided here to this exact moment in your journey, it's because it's time for you to understand that what looks like abandonment is actually approval. Your twin flame isn't trying to get rid of you. They're checking if you're really the one they need before completely surrendering their soul into your hands. That's why watch until the end, because if you miss this information, you might continue misinterpreting what could actually be the greatest act of love someone could demonstrate. And before we begin, if you recognize your own experience in what I'm about to share, leave in the comments "I hold my energy," so I know this message arrived exactly where it needed to arrive. And if you feel you're ready to discover the deepest truth about your twin flame connection, consider supporting this work by clicking the thanks button below. Your contribution allows me to continue bringing these exclusive contents based on Carl Jung's wisdom, helping souls like yours navigate the deepest mysteries of human connections. First, you need to understand why the divine masculine must apply this test, and why it's as necessary as it is painful for the one experiencing it. Carl Jung spent years studying the energetic dynamics between the divine masculine and feminine, not just in romantic relationships, but as archetypal principles that govern all forms of creation and manifestation in the universe. And for him, the divine masculine, to be able to truly surrender and consciously commit to the divine feminine, must first have absolute certainty that she won't lose herself in him, that she won't emotionally abandon herself to win him over, that she won't sacrifice her own essence to maintain the connection. But why? Because the divine masculine knows, even unconsciously, that if the woman abandons herself to be with him, she'll eventually resent that abandonment and project onto him the responsibility for her own disconnection from herself. He knows that relationships based on the feminine's self-abandonment are unsustainable long-term because they generate codependent dynamics that eventually destroy the true love that exists between them. Jung observed that the divine masculine has a specific psychological function. He's the guardian of the connection's integrity. His energetic responsibility is to ensure that the union, when it happens, is based on two complete people who consciously choose to share their wholeness, not on two lacking halves trying to complete each other. And to fulfill this responsibility, he must test whether the feminine can maintain her personal sovereignty, even in the intensity of twin flame recognition. During his clinical studies, Jung documented cases where men who had found their supposed twin flames developed apparently contradictory and self-destructive behaviors exactly when the connection deepened. They would sabotage important dates, create unnecessary conflicts, and pull away during moments of greatest intimacy. Jung initially interpreted these behaviors as commitment fear or emotional immaturity, but over time he realized there was something much deeper happening. These men were unconsciously testing the women's ability to maintain their personal integrity under emotional pressure. They needed to know if they could sustain their self-love even when facing apparent rejection, if they could maintain their dignity even when they felt like begging for attention, if they could stay true to themselves even when everything seemed to be falling apart. But this doesn't happen consciously or in a calculated way. Most of the time, the masculine himself doesn't rationally understand why he behaves in apparently contradictory ways. He feels the deep connection, recognizes her soul, may even know she's special in a way he can't explain, but something within him, an ancestral wisdom that transcends his mental understanding, pushes him to create scenarios where she must choose between pursuing him or staying centered within herself. It's as if there's an internal program, coded in the divine masculine's spiritual DNA, that automatically activates testing mechanisms when he recognizes a twin flame connection. This program isn't cruel or pointless. It's a protection system that has evolved over millennia to ensure that only relationships based on emotional and spiritual maturity are consolidated. And this is where 98% of women fail the test. They experience his pulling away as rejection, as a sign that they need to try harder to win him over, as an indication that they weren't interesting, beautiful, or special enough to hold his attention. So they start chasing, trying to convince him through words or behaviors that actually only confirm his unconscious fear, that she can't maintain her own energy, that she'll lose herself in him if he gets too close, that the responsibility for her happiness will eventually fall on his shoulders. Jung understood that this dynamic isn't cruel or pointless. It's an ancestral protection mechanism that exists to ensure that only truly mature and conscious connections materialize. Because when two twin flames unite consciously, they gain access to a level of reality co-creation that can be dangerous if it's not based on mutual integrity and personal sovereignty. The divine masculine knows this instinctively. That's why he must be sure she can be happy, complete, and fulfilled independently of him. He must know that if he goes away for work, for personal needs, for any reason, she'll continue to flourish instead of withering in his absence. He must trust that she loves him for who he is, not for the security, completeness, or validation he can offer. During this testing phase, the divine masculine meticulously observes how she responds to different types of emotional pressure. He might cancel dates last minute to see if she reacts with understanding or drama. He might take longer to respond to messages to observe if she bombards him with desperate texts or maintains her dignity. He might mention other women to check if she demonstrates confidence or becomes possessive and insecure. Each of these situations is an opportunity for her to demonstrate her emotional maturity, her ability to love without possessing, her skill to trust without controlling, and each response from her is carefully evaluated by his unconscious, which compiles evidence about her suitability as a life partner. And when she fails this test, when she demonstrates through her actions that she needs him to feel whole, something tragic happens. Not because he stops loving her, or because the connection ceases to be real, but because he knows, in a very deep layer of consciousness, that if he fully surrenders under these conditions, he'll condemn them both to a relationship based on need instead of choice, on codependency instead of mature love. That's why he pulls away even more. Not to hurt her, but to give her another opportunity, to create yet another scenario where she can choose between pursuing or staying in her own energy. And if she continues to fail, if she continues to interpret each pulling away as a sign she needs to try harder to win him over, he might eventually decide she's not ready for the type of love he has to offer. Jung observed that many men spend years in this dynamic with the same woman, hoping she'll eventually understand what's happening and change her response. They might even try to explain verbally, saying things like, "I need space," or "I'm not ready for something serious." But in reality, what they're communicating is, "I need to know if you can love me without losing yourself, if you can be happy without depending on me, if you can sustain your own energy while I process my own fears about intimacy." But there's a small percentage of women who understand this energetic game intuitively, who recognize that the more he pulls away, the more she must move closer to herself, who perceive that each test is actually an opportunity to demonstrate their emotional and spiritual maturity, who understand that true love isn't conquered through pursuit, but magnetized through self-possession and personal sovereignty. These women do something that completely surprises the divine masculine. They stop chasing. Not as a strategy or manipulation, but through genuine understanding that their happiness and fulfillment cannot depend on any external factor, however special the connection might be. They turn toward their own lives, their own interests, their own growth processes. They choose themselves as the primary source of love and fulfillment. And when this happens, when the divine feminine demonstrates through her actions that she can sustain her own energy independently of his response, something extraordinary manifests in the energetic field between them. The divine masculine finally receives the confirmation he was unconsciously seeking. She really is who he thought she was. She can love without losing herself, connect without abandoning herself, recognize a twin flame without becoming dependent on that soul. Jung observed that when this dynamic resolves in a healthy way, when the woman passes the test by choosing her own sovereignty instead of pursuing masculine validation, a complete role reversal frequently occurs. The man who was pulling away before starts approaching. The one who seemed disinterested starts showing consistent interest. The one who created distance before starts seeking closeness. But this reversal doesn't happen because she used an effective psychological strategy. It happens because she has become genuinely attractive in a way that completely transcends superficial attraction. She has become magnetic because she radiates integrity, wholeness, genuine self-love. And these qualities are irresistible to the mature divine masculine. It's as if she had turned on an inner light that was dim before. A light that doesn't depend on external factors to shine, that doesn't need validation to exist, that doesn't go out when it faces emotional storms. And this light attracts the divine masculine, like a moth is drawn to flame, like a navigator is guided by a lighthouse in darkness. So, how can you tell if you're being tested instead of rejected? There are specific signs that reveal when his pulling away is actually a disguised form of love declaration. The first sign is that his pulling away isn't constant. He pulls away, but comes back. He creates distance, but then breaks that distance with a message, a call, a look that reveals you continue to occupy an important space in his thoughts. If it were true rejection, the pulling away would be definitive and consistent. But if it's a test, he'll create cycles of distance and closeness to observe how you react to each movement. Jung understood that these cycles aren't cruel mind games, but unconscious patterns that emerge when the masculine is trying to evaluate the feminine's emotional maturity. Each time he pulls away and returns afterward, he's offering a new opportunity for her to demonstrate that she can maintain her centeredness independently of his fluctuations. During these cycles, many women become confused because they feel the intensity of the connection when they're together. But then they experience a coldness or distance that seems to make no sense. They start questioning if they imagined the connection, if they misinterpreted the signs, if there's really something special between them. But this confusion is exactly part of the test. The divine masculine must know if she's going to despair and start chasing him for external confirmation of the connection, or if she's going to trust her own intuition and maintain her internal stability independently of his fluctuations. He observes if she can do this, if she can maintain her inner truth even when he creates external confusion. She demonstrates an inner strength that is exactly what he was looking for. The second sign is that when you're together, the connection is undeniable and deep. But when you separate, he seems to transform into a different person. This happens because in your presence, he feels the truth of the connection viscerally and can't deny what exists between you. But when he pulls away, his rational mind starts questioning, analyzing, creating resistances based on unconscious fears about intimacy and commitment. This oscillation between deep intimacy and seemingly cold distance is one of the clearest indicators that you're dealing with someone who recognizes the importance of the connection, but is still processing internally whether he's ready for the responsibility that comes with that recognition. Jung realized that many men, especially those with high intellectual or professional development, have difficulty integrating experiences that transcend rational logic. When they feel a connection they can't mentally explain, they frequently alternate between surrendering to the experience and trying to control it through analysis or distancing. During the closeness phase, he might be completely present, attentive, clearly demonstrating that he recognizes something special in the connection. He might even verbalize that he's never felt anything like it, that she's different from everyone else he's known, that there's something about her he can't forget. He might open his heart in ways that surprise even him, sharing vulnerabilities he normally keeps hidden. But then, when he pulls away to process the experience, he might behave as if none of that happened, as if the intensity they experienced together was irrelevant or imaginary. He might even verbally deny that he feels something special, might minimize the importance of the intimate moments they shared, might act as if she were just another person in his life. This contradiction doesn't mean he's lying or consciously manipulating. It means he's struggling internally between what he feels and what he thinks he should feel, between what his soul recognizes and what his mind can understand. And this internal struggle manifests externally through these apparently contradictory behaviors. The third sign is that he demonstrates genuine interest in your life, your projects, your personal growth, even when he maintains romantic distance. This reveals that his interest in you transcends temporary physical or chemical attraction. He's observing who you are as a complete person, how you handle challenges, how you relate to yourself and the world around you. Jung realized that when the divine masculine evaluates a potential life partner, he pays attention not just to how she behaves with him, but mainly to how she behaves with herself. He wants to see if she has internal resources to handle life's inevitable difficulties, if she can maintain her joy and vitality even when things don't go as planned, if she has a healthy relationship with her own femininity and personal power. He might ask questions about your dreams and ambitions, might demonstrate genuine interest in your personal growth processes, might even offer support or advice for issues you're facing. This shows he sees you as a whole and complex person, not just as a possible romantic partner. He's evaluating if you would be compatible not just in intimacy, but also as life companions, as people who can mutually support each other's growth and fulfillment. The fourth sign is that he seems genuinely concerned about the impact he has on you, but continues nonetheless to create situations that test your emotional stability. This apparent contradiction reveals that he cares deeply about your well-being, but must also know if you have sufficient inner strength to be with someone who will constantly challenge you to grow. You might notice he observes your reactions carefully, that he seems to pay attention to how you handle the uncertainty, frustration, confusion he creates. If you react desperately, needily, or dramatically, he might pull away even more. But if you maintain your dignity, your centeredness, your ability to be happy independently of his actions, he might start showing more interest and consistency. The mature, divine masculine doesn't want a partner who will break at the first difficulty, or who will resent him when he needs to focus on other life aspects beyond the relationship. He's looking for someone who is resilient, flexible, capable of supporting his dreams, even when it means less attention for her temporarily. The fifth and most important sign is that you feel, in a very deep layer of your intuition, that there's something real and meaningful between you, even when external evidence suggests otherwise. This visceral sense of connection that persists despite circumstances is frequently your internal guidance system telling you it's worth sustaining your own energy and waiting for the natural unfolding of the situation. Jung deeply trusted the wisdom of intuition, especially feminine intuition, which he considered one of the most refined forms of perception available to human beings. If you continue to feel there's something special between you, even when he behaves confusingly or distantly, your soul might be picking up information your rational mind can't process. This intuition can manifest in several ways. You might have recurring dreams with him, might sense his energy even when you're physically apart, might have sudden insights about what he's feeling or thinking. You might experience synchronicities that seem connected to the dynamic between you, like songs playing at the exact moment you think of him, or chance encounters in places where you wouldn't normally see each other. But here's the most important part. Even recognizing all these signs, even understanding you're being tested instead of rejected, the only adequate response is the same. Choose yourself. Not as a strategy to pass the test, but as a genuine act of self-love and self-respect. Because the truth is that even if he's testing you, even if deep down he knows he wants to be with you, that doesn't change the fact that your happiness and fulfillment cannot depend on his decisions. You must be capable of living a full and satisfying life independently of his choice to approach or pull away definitively. Jung observed that individuation, the process of becoming a complete and integrated individual, is always a prerequisite for healthy and lasting relationships. And in the context of twin flames, where the intensity of the connection can easily lead to unhealthy fusion of identities, this individuation becomes even more crucial. The process of choosing yourself isn't a single act, but a daily practice that requires constant awareness and discipline. It means waking up in the morning and deciding to invest your energy first in your own well-being, growth, and fulfillment, before thinking about what he's doing or feeling. It means creating routines that nourish your soul, dedicating time to activities that genuinely bring you joy, cultivating relationships that support and value you. When you choose yourself, when you invest your energy in your own growth, fulfillment, and happiness, several things happen simultaneously. First, you stop emitting a frequency of lack and need that naturally repels the mature masculine. Second, you begin to radiate an energy of abundance and fulfillment that is magnetically attractive. Third, you develop the internal resources necessary to sustain a deep connection without losing yourself in it. And fourth, perhaps most important of all, you place yourself in a position where you can make conscious choices about who you want to share your life with, instead of accepting any crumbs of attention from someone you've idealized as your only chance for happiness. If you're living this approach and withdrawal dynamic with someone you recognize as a special connection, remember, the most important test isn't winning his love. It's discovering if you can maintain self-love independently of his actions. Jung would say this is love's true alchemy, transforming the lead of lack into the gold of emotional self-sufficiency. And when you complete this transformation, you naturally attract people who operate at the same level of maturity and consciousness. if you felt I was speaking directly to your soul about this unique experience you're living, leave in the comments, "I hold my energy." That way, I'll know this message arrived where it needed to arrive, and that you've understood that not all tests are punishments. Some are preparation for something extraordinary. And if you're ready to completely transform this dynamic that has maybe been consuming you for months or years, I need to tell you about something that can dramatically accelerate this healing and growth process. I've created 2 exclusive materials based on Carl Jung's deepest teachings about individuation and conscious relationships. The first is 21 Days of Transformation with Carl Jung, a practical guide that will take you through the most powerful techniques Jung developed to sustain your own energy and discover your personal sovereignty. For 21 days, you'll work with specific exercises to integrate your shadow, dialogue with your unconscious, and mainly, establish yourself in your own energetic fullness, even when everything around seems to test your limits. The second is the Soul Survival Manual, because I know that when you're being tested by the divine masculine in the most intense way that exists, some days are simply hard to get through. This manual contains practical strategies, based on depth psychology, for navigating the most challenging moments of the journey. These are tools you can use when the temptation to crack and chase him becomes unbearable, when you question if you can really sustain your own energy, when you need concrete reminders of who you really are behind this test. The link is in the first pinned comment of this video. Be prepared. The divine masculine is testing you not because he doubts your worth, but because he recognizes your importance. And when you pass this test, when you demonstrate that you can sustain your own energy independently of external actions, you'll discover that true love isn't something that's conquered, but something that's magnetized through inner fullness and unconditional authenticity. Remember, only a minority of souls manages to recognize this test for what it really is. You've made it this far because your consciousness is already ready for this understanding. Thank you for having the courage to see beyond appearances and discover the deepest truth about what it means to be tested by the universe. See you in the next video.